Alright Laker fans, we're nearly there, we're nearly at that point again. Training camp is nearly upon us and we have a lot to look forward to with it in my opinion. For a team like the Lakers that did make a few new additions, adding both Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton off the buyout market, signing Jake LaRavia in free agency, and drafting rookie Adu Thero, how will they factor into the rotation and what do they have to prove, if anything, throughout training camp? And not only them, but who has the most to gain on their team throughout training camp? I mean, apart from guys like Luka Doncic, LeBron, and even Austin Reeves and probably DeAndre Ayton who have very little to almost nothing to gain from it, their spot is secure and they don't have a lot to play for in my opinion. Who are the guys that have more to play for? Either for more playing time itself, not to lose the rotation spot, maybe to gain a rotation spot, and to prove to JJ Redick that they maybe have more to offer than he initially thought or might be thinking going into this season. We're going to talk about exactly that. Now I think you probably could make a case for 5 to anywhere up to 8 different players on their team, talking about why training camp is so important for that particular player, whether it's from a role standpoint, a playing time standpoint, maybe not to get traded standpoint. I think you can make a case for a number of different guys. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of going a bit more in depth, we're just going to talk about 3 of them today. Talk about why it's so important for them and what both myself and JJ Redick are likely looking for from them and what they have to show throughout training camp. So without further ado here, the first player that I want to talk about does happen to be Dalton Knecht. I mean, like I referred to before, there's a bunch of guys on the outside looking in of their current rotation, and I believe that Dalton Knecht happens to be one of them. I'd probably put him as their 11th man right now, falling behind Marcus Smart and Gabe Vincent in their current backcourt. Yes, he might be more talented than maybe either one of them, both of them, but he doesn't have as much reliability to offer, isn't as consistent on defense, and that does happen to be a big thing they're looking for, and especially in their backcourt too in my opinion. So as of right now, I would put Dalton Knecht on the outside looking in of their current rotation, and he definitely doesn't want to be in that spot. I mean, last season he even started for their team, starting in 16 games throughout last season, even playing incredibly well in that time frame, averaging roughly 17 points per game on 39% 3-point shooting. So to go from that to now being out of the rotation a year later is not a spot that he wants to be in. And well, then if he wants to prove that he shouldn't be traded and that he has shown improvement, then he's got to find a way to show it in front of JJ Redick. And the first opportunity for him to do that will be during their team's training camp. So he really can't afford to waste any time here. The moment he steps on the court and the moment their team gets together, he has to show that he's very committed, has shown improvement, and is willing to do whatever it takes to get back in the rotation and be the guy that JJ Redick wants him to be. And if you ask me, I definitely would point to Dalton Knecht's defense here. Not the fact that he can't play defense or hasn't shown good moments on defense, neither that's true, but from the fact that he's not very committed on defense, doesn't appear to enjoy playing defense, and simply won't commit to doing it very often. That's been the problem with Dalton Knecht. I mean, not only me saying it, but fans pointing it out, directly with JJ Redick mentioning it and talking about what he wants Dalton Knecht to improve in. That's what Dalton Knecht has to take a heart here. He's got to show it, he's got to be ready to be committed to it. It can't be for simply one play and then take 2 plays off thereafter. He's got to be a much more committed defender and apply his athletic ability to defense, not simply offense. You know, throughout the early portion of last season, he really had more leeway to get away with it. At that point, they didn't have a healthy Jared Vanderbilt, obviously didn't have Jake LaRavia or Marcus Smart, had yet to trade for Dorian Finney-Smith, definitely had a much more shallow and not as deep rotation, and that led to Dalton Knecht building some bad habits from them kind of needing him. Yes, obviously his shot was falling better at that point, he was actually playing incredibly well for them and was one of, if not their best 3-point shooter, but the defense often didn't come along with it and he wasn't really punished for it with it, at least not very often. But eventually post-trade deadline that did eventually catch up with him, following the acquisition of Dorian Finney-Smith, then with Luka Doncic, them kind of going in a different direction, that eventually led to Knecht being benched a few times and falling out of the rotation, which will continue if he can improve that defense and be a bit more consistent with it. And well, now with him having time to learn from it, going back and watching the tape and probably learning team defense a little bit, applying his athletic ability to playing defense a bit better, hopefully he can translate it to it, but if he can't, then he probably won't be in the rotation, at least not their every game rotation. This is the opportunity for him to show it, apply it throughout training camp, show JJ Redick that he does have the ability to show improvement and is committed to making that improvement too. I mean, I really have zero doubt about his offense. For me, it all comes down to defense, and I'm sure that applies to JJ Redick here too. He knows what he can get from Dalton Knecht. He directly drew up plays for him in his rookie season, so that's not something he should be worried about, and not something he wants Dalton Knecht to be working on, at least not that much compared to his defense. It all comes down to the defensive end of the court here for Dalton Knecht, which he will have to show early and often throughout training camp. Though, apart from Dalton Knecht, I think another guy that has a lot to gain from training camp happens to be Maxi Kleber. After all, he didn't play a single regular season game or minute for their team last season. Yes, he was acquired at the trade deadline with Luka Doncic, but did have a broken foot, so he didn't play until their Game 5 defeat to the Minnesota Timberwolves, playing a grand total of 5 minutes in that game. And well, now entering the offseason healthy, shown by his workout clips and even doing his own little body transformation version like Luka Doncic, he appears to be healthy and maybe has something to offer their team and their rotation next season too. I mean, reports have even talked about it, saying that the Lakers don't want to trade him or Gabe Vincent to evaluate them and see what they can get from him first, and I think that's really hinting at Maxi Kleber here. After all, he's very different than any other frontcourt player they have on their team. Is 6'10", but unlike both Jackson Hayes and DeAndre Ayton, is a bit more versatile offensively, meaning that he can offer 3-point shooting, does have the ability to space the floor, something that neither of those two can do, something that nobody on their team at the 5 and that plays the 5 for mostly full time does have the ability to do. So that's kind of the pathway here for Maxi Kleber, and potentially the pathway to get more playing time in the rotation too. And well, if he can show that throughout training camp, show to be healthy throughout training camp, prove to be that he's not far away from his prime and what he was back in Dallas with Luka Doncic, then he probably will have a spot in the rotation and probably will gain favor from JJ Redick too. I mean, it's kind of weird to think about, but they do happen to be former teammates. No, not Luka Doncic and Kleber, but JJ Redick and Maxi Kleber. Redick has played with him, yes, during the latter part of his NBA career in his final season, back when he was traded to Dallas and played a little bit prior to getting hurt with both Luka Doncic and Maxi Kleber. He knows what Kleber can do, he knows what he has to offer and what he might be able to offer their team, so I'm sure that JJ Redick is very curious in exploring it. I mean, I think he showed that by playing Maxi Kleber coming off an injury in an elimination playoff game for their team. So if that carries over into training camp, if Kleber can show to be healthy, can show to be the player that they really don't have in their rotation or really on their entire team apart from him, then he probably will quickly gain favor with JJ Redick and has a lot to gain from training camp. So between both Dalton Knecht and Maxi Kleber, I think they have a lot to gain and do have a lot to prove in training camp, but it's not only going to be those two. Apart from them and pointing to a new addition on their team, I mean, yes, Kleber kind of is a new addition given the fact they didn't really play with them, but for a true new addition on their team and a guy that can have actually a lot to prove in training camp does happen to be Jake Arabia. Now I think he'll be in the rotation regardless, but depending on what he shows throughout training camp and preseason, might depend on if he gets more or less playing time than Jared Vanderbilt, either between 13 to 18 minutes per game, or between 18 to 23 minutes a game to start out with. I think that will kind of be the outlook for Jake Arabia, what he has to gain from training camp and what he has to show to get it from JJ Redick. He does have something to prove here too. I mean, he had a very good season for himself last year, playing a career high in games played, minutes played, putting up a new career high in rebounds per game, assists per game, 3-point shooting, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, pretty much everything besides points per game, and that's not really the true way to evaluate a player to begin with. I think he definitely has a good outlook, but he's got to show that it wasn't a fluke. Wasn't a fluke that he shot above 35% for the first time in 3 years. Wasn't a fluke that he had a positive rating on defense, posting a plus 1.1 defensive BPM rating. Not a fluke that he can be a reliable rotation option, even for a playoff team like he showed with Memphis. He's got to prove that throughout training camp, and then that can translate into the regular season and get himself more playing time while doing it. And well, to then take that even a step further, I think Jake Arabia has the opportunity to show that they might not need to make a trade. You know, we've often heard about them being interested in a 3-and-D wing, somebody like in Andrew Wiggins for example, that directly came up again this week. If Jake Arabia can prove to be that for their team, be that 3-and-D two-way wing for their team off the bench, or potentially even later on in the starting lineup, then they might not need to make a trade, or maybe not as big of a trade for one. Maybe translating that from an Andrew Wiggins type of player that would take a lot to get, maybe down to a Haywood Highsmith that's more of a borderline rotation player. At that point, that's kind of what Jake Arabia can do for their team and potentially the trade outcome that he could generate from their team too. not only protecting himself, but giving himself more playing time, protecting the trade assets on their team, and actually giving them a viable rotation option that they don't currently have or might not believe they currently have. So between himself, Maxi Kleber, and Dalton Knecht, I think they have a lot to show throughout training camp, and if they can show it or if they don't show it, that might lead to a different rotation, a trade that does or doesn't happen, and an adjustment in minutes for those three. So with all of that being said here, what do you guys think? Who do you think has the most to gain on their team from training camp? Who has the most to prove, and which then will JJ Redick be looking at and following the closest throughout training camp? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one, and if you enjoyed the video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night.